This past Sunday, I was sitting in the church pews and I was listening to my pastor, Rick Atchley, tell me about a church it's a satellite church that's related to our Church of Christ facilities here in Dallas. It's a church that is being planted in Harlem. And one of the things that Pastor Atchley was hearing about from this new pastor is the war that the city of New York, led by Mayor de Blasio, is leading against churches. And really against freedom. I mean, seriously, this is, if he really does believe in freedom, then he's going to allow these churches to be able to do what they're doing. I mean, we say phrases like this a lot, talk about politicians being for or against freedom, but this is a guy that has, not only supported most or all of the freedom snatching work of the previous mayor, Mike Bloomberg, but he's found his own niche, gone after a number of things. This story, though, interests me. Joining me right now, Jack Roberts is the founding pastor of Bronx House of Faith. This is one of the churches that is being targeted by Bill de Blasio. They're trying to limit churches from using public schools and facilities on the weekend for worship, for gathering. Also joining me is Jordan Lawrence. He is the Senior Counsel, Alliance Defending Freedom.org. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Obviously, as a Christian, this kind of hits a little close to home. I was really shocked to hear not only that this has been happening, but to hear in particular how long you and the Bronx House of Faith has been fighting this battle. Pastor Roberts, if you could, tell me a little bit about the beginning of your fight, so to speak, with not just Bill de Blasio, but since 1995 against having this sort of worship gathering shut down.
Well, the church began in 1971 with Bob Hall and I wanting to bring the gospel to one of the poorest neighborhoods in New York City. And we first met in homes, but after a while that was no longer suitable, and we applied to the New York City Department of Education, called the Board of Education at that point, to rent a school on weekends for worship services. The request was denied because a policy was in place that prohibited churches from renting it for worship services. So a lawsuit was filed in 1995, and Alliance Defending Freedom was central to that, and Jordan Lawrence was the lead counsel. In 2002, ADF was able to get an injunction that allowed us to rent the schools on Sundays, which we have done since then, and there have been about 60 to 80 churches who've rented public schools for that purpose. But there's been a legal battle going back and forth in the federal district court and the appeals court, and finally we're applying to the Supreme Court to finally resolve the issue.
Yeah, and this would create such a chilling effect, bringing Jordan Lawrence here with the ADF. This would have such a chilling effect, yes, on worship and church planting. And I don't understand how they would be able to do this. I mean, is it just these churches that are not allowed to rent public facilities, or is it just, can others rent them? What's their reasoning on this?
The policy bans worship services, but basically allows everything else. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. I mean, they've even allowed the filming of episodes of Law and Order in the public schools. The only thing they specifically ban is no religious worship services or otherwise using the school as a house of worship. Now, people have probably heard of churches meeting in New York City schools because we've had this court order in effect since 2002. But unless the Supreme Court takes the case on February 23rd, we'll get the orders list. The mayor can kick out all the churches out of the schools. And what we're fearful of and concerned about is that other communities, because everywhere else in the country, of the top 50 school districts, New York City is the only one in America that has a policy like this.